I was folding my father's funeral programs when Reed slid the envelope across his mahogany desk like he was serving divorce papers. Elizabeth, your father left specific instructions about how this should be handled. My name is Elizabeth Rose, and I just buried both my parents within 6 months of each other. Mom went first, quietly, like she did everything else. Dad followed, probably because he couldn't figure out how to work the washing machine. I'd spent the last week organizing everything while my brother Christian locked himself in his childhood bedroom, claiming he was too emotional to help. The same bedroom where he'd been living rent-free for the past 3 years, playing video games and ordering DoorDash on Dad's credit card. What kind of instructions? I asked, though something cold was already settling in my stomach. Reed cleared his throat. He'd been the family attorney for 15 years, but today he wouldn't meet my eyes. Perhaps Christian should be here for this. Christian is at home having what he calls a grief day, which apparently involves a lot of energy drinks and Call of Duty. I leaned forward. Just tell me, Reed. He opened the envelope and pulled out a handwritten letter. Dad's shaky cursive filled a single page. Your father wrote this himself. No legal counsel. Reed's voice got smaller. He wanted me to read it aloud. Then read it. Reed adjusted his glasses. To my son Christian, you inherit the house, all property and remaining assets. You are the man of the family now. He paused, swallowed hard. To Elizabeth, you have always been a good daughter, but a woman cannot carry on the Rose name or legacy. This is how it must be. The words hit like ice water. I sat perfectly still, watching Reed's face turn red. There's more, he whispered. Elizabeth, you are excluded from inheritance as you are a woman and will someday belong to another man's family. The silence stretched until I could hear the wall clock ticking. Reed was sweating now, probably wondering if I'd scream or cry or flip his desk over. Instead, I laughed. Elizabeth? Reed looked terrified. Sorry, it's just, I wiped my eyes. It's exactly what I expected, and it was. 33 years of watching Dad light up when Christian walked into a room. 33 years of, Elizabeth will help with that, while Christian got to just exist. When I graduated summa cum laude, Dad said, That's nice, honey. When Christian barely scraped through community college, we had a party. So Christian gets everything, I said. The house, Dad's savings, Mom's jewelry. Yes. And I get a lecture about belonging to some future husband. Reed nodded miserably. The office door burst open and Christian stumbled in, still wearing yesterday's t-shirt. His eyes were red-rimmed, but I couldn't tell if it was from crying or staring at screens. Reed called me, he said, trying to look solemn. This is so hard, you know. But I guess Dad knew I'd be responsible with everything. Responsible. This from someone who'd never paid a bill in his life. The house needs work, Christian continued, settling into the chair next to me like he owned the place, which apparently he now did. But I've got big plans. Maybe turn it into rental units or something. Finally do something important with it. Rental units, I repeated. Yeah, you know, passive income. Dad always said I had a head for business. Reed was staring at his desk like he wanted to crawl under it. Well, I said, standing up, congratulations, Christian. You're finally getting everything you deserve. Christian beamed. Thanks, Liz. I know this is probably hard for you, but Dad knew what he was doing. It's just how things work, you know? Traditional families and all that. Traditional, I said. Right? I shook Reed's sweaty hand and headed for the door. Elizabeth, Reed called after me, if you want to contest this. No need, I said, turning back with a smile that made both men shift uncomfortably. I think everything will work out exactly as it should. Walking to my car, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in months. First National Bank Safety Deposit Services, Time to visit Box 247. Time to remind everyone who actually owned the ground they were standing on. The bank vault felt like a tomb, all concrete and fluorescent lights. I hadn't been down here in 2 years, but my key still worked perfectly. "Take your time, Ms. Rose," the bank employee said, leaving me alone with Box 247. Inside, underneath my college transcripts and birth certificate, was a manila folder marked Rose Property 2014. I pulled it out, and there it was, the land deed with my signature, clear as day, 10 years ago. I was 23, working 3 tutoring jobs and living in a studio apartment that smelled like the Chinese restaurant downstairs. Mom called me crying. "Elizabeth, honey, we need help. The bank is threatening foreclosure." I drove over that same night. Dad was pacing the living room, his face gray with stress. "It's temporary," he kept saying, "just until we get back on our feet." "How much do you need?" I asked. 47,000, Mom whispered. "We refinanced twice already." I stared at them. 47,000 was every penny I'd saved for graduate school, every late night tutoring spoiled rich kids in calculus, every weekend I'd worked instead of having a social life. "I don't have that kind of cash," I said. Dad's shoulders sagged. "Then we'll lose the house." "But," I said slowly, "I could buy the land underneath it." They both looked confused. "The property records show the house and land as separate assets. If I buy the land, you keep living here, but the bank can't foreclose because I'll own the ground." Dad's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. You'd do that for us?" "Of course. We're family." The paperwork took 3 weeks. I remember sitting in the title office, signing document after document while Dad paced behind me. "This is just temporary," he said for the 100th time. "Once we're stable, we'll transfer it back." "Sure, Dad." "I mean it, Elizabeth. This stays in the family." The title clerk, a tired-looking woman named Janet, glanced up at him. "Sir, the deed will be in your daughter's name. Any future transfers would require her signature." Right. But she's family. She'll do what's right." Janet looked at me. "Miss, do you understand you'll be the legal owner of this property?" "I understand." Dad clapped my shoulder. "My smart girl. Always solving problems. Always solving problems." That became my role. When the water heater died, I paid for it. When Christian wrecked his car, I covered the insurance deductible. When Mom needed surgery, I maxed out my credit cards. And every time Dad would say the same thing. "We're all family here. We take care of each other." But when Christian dropped out of college, Dad said, "Boys mature slower. He'll find his way." When I got promoted to senior analyst, Dad said, "That's nice, honey. Is there any dessert left?" Back in the vault, I photographed every page of the deed with my phone. The land was still mine, had been for 10 years. And in all that time, through every family dinner and holiday gathering, nobody had ever mentioned transferring it back. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the county assessor's website. The Rose family home, 1247 Maple Street, sat on lot 15B. Owner of record, Elizabeth Rose. Current assessed value, $127,000. I opened a new browser tab and searched for certified mail services. 20 minutes later, I was back in my car with a manila envelope addressed to Christian Rose, 1247 Maple Street. Inside was a single sheet of paper, notice of property ownership. "Dear Christian, this letter serves as formal notification that the land beneath 1247 Maple Street is owned by Elizabeth Rose. Deed recorded 03/15/2014, Book 847, page 23. Any sale, transfer, or modification of the property must be approved by the landowner. Please contact me before proceeding with any real estate transactions. Sincerely, Elizabeth Rose." legal property owner. I drove to the post office and paid for certified mail, return receipt requested. The clerk stamped it with tomorrow's date. Important document? She asked. You could say that. My phone buzzed as I walked back to my car. Text from Christiane. Already got 3 people interested in the house. Dad would be so proud. This is going to change everything for me. I typed back, I'm sure it will. Then I deleted his number and drove home to my apartment, the same studio I'd been living in for 10 years because every spare dollar had gone to family. Time to see how much family loyalty was really worth. My phone started ringing at 7:43 a.m. Christiane's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 7:44 and 7:45. By 8 a.m., I had 6 missed calls and 3 increasingly frantic voicemails. Liz, call me back. There's some kind of mistake with the house paperwork. Elizabeth, this isn't funny. The realtor says there's a problem with the title. Call me. What the hell did you do? Call me back. I was pouring my second cup of coffee when he called again. This time I answered. Good morning, Christian. What did you do to the house? His voice was shaking. I didn't do anything to the house. The realtor says someone else owns the land. She says she can't list it until we resolve some ownership issue. That's strange. Elizabeth, I swear to God, if you're screwing with me. Did you get my letter? Silence, then. What letter? Check your mail. I heard him stomping around, probably still in his pajamas, the sound of the front door opening, then rustling paper. Property ownership notice? His voice went up an octave. What is this supposed to mean? It means I own the land your house sits on. That's impossible. Deed was recorded in 2014. You can look it up yourself. More silence. Then, this is some kind of joke. Nope. You can't own the land under Dad's house. Actually, I can, and I do. But Dad left me everything. He left you the house. I already owned the land. I could hear him breathing hard. This is insane. You're my sister. I am. And you're my brother who just inherited everything while I got a lecture about belonging to some future husband. That's different. Dad was just being traditional. Traditional enough to cut me out completely, not traditional enough to remember who saved the property in the first place. You saved it? 10 years ago, when you were failing community college and Mom and Dad were about to lose everything to foreclosure. I bought the land with my graduate school money. I don't remember that. You wouldn't. You were too busy playing Xbox. His voice got nasty. So what? You want me to thank you? Fine, thanks. Now sign whatever I need to sell this place. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. I'm not signing anything. Elizabeth, be reasonable. I need this money. I've got plans. What plans? More video games. I'm starting a business. With what skills? I don't have to explain myself to you. He was yelling now. Just fix this. There's nothing to fix. Everything is exactly as it should be. The line went quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, calculating. How much do you want? Excuse me? For your signature. How much? I'm not for sale, Christiane. Everyone's for sale. Name your price. I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Sylvia. We need to talk. My cousin Sylvia, Dad's sister's daughter, who'd always treated family gatherings like networking events. I texted back, about what? About you destroying Christian's inheritance over some petty grudge. Not petty, not a grudge, just business. He's family, Elizabeth. This is cruel. So was cutting me out of the will for having ovaries. Your father had his reasons. His reason was sexism. You're being dramatic. Christian needs this money more than you do. I stared at that text for a full minute. Why? Because he's a man? Because he doesn't have a career like you do. He doesn't have a career because he's never tried to get one. Not everyone is as driven as you, Elizabeth. Some people need help. I gave help for 10 years. I'm done. Think about what your parents would want. They made what they wanted very clear. My phone rang again, Christian. Sylvia says you're being unreasonable. Sylvia should mind her own business. She's trying to help. She says there might be legal ways to challenge your ownership. Let me save you some money, Christian. There aren't. We'll see about that. Yes, we will. This isn't over, Elizabeth. No, it's not. I hung up and blocked his number. That evening I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with words cut from magazines, like some kind of ransom note. Do the right thing or else. I took a picture of it and saved it to a folder on my phone labeled Evidence. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and started researching real estate attorneys. If they wanted to play games, I'd make sure I was playing to win. Margaret Vance had the kind of office that screamed, I win cases. Floor-to-ceiling law books, diplomas covering one wall, and a handshake that could crack walnuts. So, she said, settling behind her desk, someone's trying to intimidate you into giving up property you legally own. That's the short version. And the long version involves family inheritance drama and anonymous threats. I slid the magazine cutout letter across her desk. This was under my door yesterday. Margaret examined it with reading glasses. Charming, very 1970s serial killer chic. She looked up. Have you reported this to police? Not yet. I wanted to understand my legal position first. Smart. Let's start with the property deed. I handed over the folder. Margaret spread the documents across her desk like she was reading tarot cards. This is solid, she said after 10 minutes. Recorded properly. Taxes current. No liens or encumbrances. You own this land, free and clear. So Christian can't force me to sell? Not unless you sign. And based on what you've told me about the inheritance situation, I'd recommend building a fortress of documentation. What kind of documentation? Margaret pulled out a legal pad. Bank records showing you paid for the land, any correspondence about the original arrangement, evidence of financial support you provided to your parents over the years. I have all of that. Good. Because if your brother tries to claim fraud or undue influence, we'll need to show this was a legitimate transaction. I spent the next 3 hours in Margaret's conference room organizing 10 years of financial records, bank statements showing the $47,000 withdrawal, receipts for home repairs I'd paid for, credit card statements covering Mom's medical bills. Jesus, Margaret said, reviewing the pile. You've been their personal ATM. Family takes care of family. That's what Dad always said. Apparently that philosophy had some gender restrictions. My phone buzzed. Text from Luna, my coworker. Can you call me? Something weird happened at work. I stepped into the hallway. Luna, what's wrong? Someone called asking about you. Said they were doing a background check for a potential business partnership. What kind of questions? Weird stuff, like whether you'd ever mentioned having financial problems, whether you seemed desperate for money, whether you'd ever talked about your family's finances. My stomach dropped. What did you tell them? Nothing. I hung up. But Elizabeth, it felt like they were fishing for dirt. Did they give a name? Some guy named Marcus said he was from a private investigation firm. I walked back into Margaret's office. They're hiring investigators. Margaret didn't look surprised. Standard intimidation tactic. They're hoping to find something that makes you look bad. Will they find anything? Based on what I've seen, You're squeaky clean, but they might try to twist the narrative, paint you as someone who took advantage of elderly parents, even though I saved their house. Especially because you saved their house. They'll claim you manipulated them into signing over the land. My phone rang. Unknown number. Elizabeth Rose? Who's this? Marcus Webb, Webb Investigations. I'm calling about some financial irregularities involving your parents' property. I put the call on a speaker and nodded to Margaret. What irregularities? I asked. Well, it seems there was a land transfer in 2014 that might not have been properly disclosed to all family members. The land purchase was completely legal. I'm sure it was, but sometimes these family arrangements can be complicated. I'd like to ask you a few questions. I don't think so. Ms. Rose, I'm trying to help resolve this situation amicably. Your brother is very concerned about potential fraud. Margaret leaned toward the phone. This is Margaret Vance, Ms. Rose's attorney. Any further communication should go through me. Silence, then. Of course, I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Well, Margaret said, that was faster than usual. Is this going to get ugly? It already is ugly, but here's the thing about bullies. They usually back down when you show them you're not afraid to fight. I gathered my documents. So, what's our next move? We file a preemptive motion establishing your ownership rights. Put everything on the record before they can muddy the waters with false claims. How long will that take? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Walking to my car, I called Luna back. Hey, can you do me a favor? If anyone else calls asking about me, get their information and tell them I'm unavailable. Of course. Elizabeth, are you okay? I'm fine. Just dealing with some family drama. The kind that requires lawyers? The kind that requires lawyers. That night I sat at my kitchen table organizing receipts by date, every payment to my parents' mortgage, every utility bill I'd covered, every emergency expense I'd handled while Christian played video games. 10 years of being the responsible one, 10 years of being taken for granted. Time to show them what responsibility really looked like. The coffee shop was neutral territory. Christian had texted from a new number, asking to meet like adults. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing the same hoodie from 3 days ago. Thanks for coming, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. You have 15 minutes. Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot with this whole thing. Wrong foot? I mean, I understand you're upset about the will. Dad could have handled it better. I sipped my latte and waited. But we're family, right? We should be able to work this out. What are you proposing? Christian pulled out a folded paper. I talked to a real estate appraiser. The land is worth about $50,000. Try again. Okay, 60. That's more than you paid for it. Christian, the land is worth 127, minimum. His face fell. I don't have that kind of money. Then you don't get the land? Come on, Liz, be reasonable. I'll give you 75,000. That's a 50% profit. No. 80? No. He leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. What do you want from me? Nothing. That's the point. This is insane. You're destroying my inheritance over some feminist bullshit. The woman at the next table looked over. I kept my voice level. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting what's mine. Dad left me that house. Dad left you a house that sits on my land. Big difference. Christian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed. Sylvia says you're just being vindictive. Sylvia should worry about her own problems. She's trying to help. She thinks maybe we could work out some kind of payment plan. What kind of payment plan? Like I could pay you monthly once I get the house sold and start my business? What business? I'm still working out the details. I stood up. We're done here. Wait, he grabbed my arm. Elizabeth, please, I need this money. For what? I've got debts, credit cards, student loans. I'm drowning here. Get a job. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I pulled my arm free and walked out. Through the window, I watched Christian slump over the table with his head in his hands. My phone rang as I got to my car. Margaret. Elizabeth, we have a problem. Your brother filed a motion claiming adverse possession of the land. What does that mean? He's arguing that since your parents lived on the property for 10 years after you bought it, they gained legal ownership through continuous occupation. Can he do that? He can try. It's a weak argument, but it'll tie things up in court for months. How weak? Adverse possession requires hostile occupation. Your parents were there with your permission as the landowner, but judges don't always understand property law nuances. That evening I was researching adverse possession cases when Luna called. Turn on Channel 7 News, now. I flipped to the local station. A reporter was standing outside my parents' house. Family dispute over inheritance has divided the Rose family. Christian Rose claims his sister is trying to steal his rightful inheritance through legal technicalities. The camera cut to Christian, wearing a clean shirt for once. My sister has always been jealous of me, he said. She can't stand that Dad trusted me with the family legacy. Now she's using some old paperwork to try to steal my house. And what do you say to those who suggest this is about gender discrimination? The reporter asked. That's ridiculous. My dad loved Elizabeth, but someone has to carry on the family name, and that's traditionally the son's responsibility. The segment ended with the reporter saying Elizabeth Rose was unavailable for comment. My phone started buzzing immediately. Unknown numbers, probably reporters. I turned it off and opened my laptop. Time to check something I'd been putting off. I logged into the county recorder's office website and searched for liens against 1247 Maple Street. There it was, filed 6 months ago. Mechanics Lion, $15,000. Filed by Elizabeth Rose. For unpaid home repairs and maintenance. I'd filed it right after Dad's cancer diagnosis when I realized how this would probably end. Every roof repair, every furnace service, every plumbing emergency I'd covered while Christian lived there rent-free. The lien was perfectly legal, and it meant that even if Christian somehow won his adverse possession claim, he'd owe me $15,000 before he could sell. I picked up my phone and called Margaret. I need to tell you about something I filed 6 months ago. What kind of something? A mechanic's lien against the property for unpaid home repairs. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Elizabeth, you magnificent, devious woman. How much? 15,000, with interest and penalties, probably 18 by now. So even if he wins his court case, he still can't sell without paying me. You filed this before your parents died? Right after Dad's diagnosis. I had a feeling about how the will would go. Jesus, you've been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. I learned from the best teachers. 10 years of watching them plan around me taught me to plan around them. I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine. Outside my apartment window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Tomorrow, Christian would probably discover the lien. Tomorrow, the real fireworks would start. But tonight, I was exactly where I wanted to be. Reed called at 6:30 a.m., his voice shaking. Elizabeth, I need to see you. Today. It's urgent. What's wrong? I can't discuss this over the phone. Can you be here by 9? His office felt different this time. The confidence was gone, replaced by the smell of stale coffee and desperation. I'm in trouble, Reed said without preamble. The state bar is investigating me. For what? Failure to properly advise clients about property conflicts. Christian filed a complaint claiming I should have known about your land ownership before reading the will. I sat down slowly. And? And they're right. I should have done a title search. It's basic due diligence. Reed's hands were shaking as he opened a file cabinet. But that's not why I called you here. He pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents. Your parents left more than just the will. There were private letters, instructions they never wanted read aloud. What kind of instructions? Reed spread 3 handwritten pages across his desk, letters to each other, about you and Christian, about their decisions. The first letter was in Mom's careful script. Melvin, I know you think this is right, but Elizabeth has done so much for us. She saved our home. She paid for my surgery. Maybe we should reconsider. Dad's response was in his aggressive scrawl. Patricia, you don't understand. Christian needs to feel like a man. If his sister outshines him, what does that make him? A woman inherits through marriage. A man builds his own legacy. The third letter made my stomach turn. Melvin, what if Elizabeth never marries? What if she ends up alone? Then she'll learn to depend on her brother like nature intended. Christian must outshine his sister to stay a man. I read that line 3 times. Christian must outshine his sister to stay a man. There's more, Reed said quietly. He pulled out another sheet. This one's from last year. Patricia, I worry we've made Christian too dependent. He doesn't work, doesn't contribute. Maybe Elizabeth deserves more recognition. It's too late to change course now. If we give Elizabeth equal treatment, Christian will never amount to anything. Better to sacrifice one child's happiness than lose them both. I set the letters down carefully. They knew exactly what they were doing. Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I should have. How long have you had these? Since the day after the funeral. They were sealed with instructions not to open them unless there were legal challenges. And you're showing them to me now because Christian's lawyer subpoenaed all documents related to the estate. These will become public record. My phone buzzed. Text from Luna. Emergency. Someone posted about you on Facebook. It's bad. I opened Facebook and searched for my name. Sylvia had posted a long rant in the local community group. I'm heartbroken to share what's happening to my cousin Christian Rose. His own sister is using legal loopholes to steal his inheritance, the family home his parents left him. Elizabeth has always been jealous of Christian's close relationship with their father. Now she's using some old paperwork to claim she owns the land under his house. This is what happens when feminism goes too far. A son can't even inherit his father's legacy without his bitter sister destroying everything. Please share this so people know what kind of person Elizabeth Rose really is. The post had 43 shares and dozens of comments. Most supportive of Christian, calling me greedy and vindictive. But a few people had done their research. Wait, didn't Elizabeth pay for her parents' medical bills? I remember seeing fundraisers. My daughter was tutored by Elizabeth years ago. She was working multiple jobs to help her family. If she owns the land legally, how is that stealing? I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to Margaret. Read, I said. I want copies of those letters. Elizabeth, maybe we should. Copies, now. He ran them through his scanner with trembling hands. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. Tell the truth. I drove straight to the community center where the neighborhood association was meeting. 25 people sat in folding chairs discussing the upcoming block party. Excuse me, I said from the back of the room. I'd like to address the rumors that are circulating about my family. The room went quiet. I recognized half these people, neighbors who'd watched me grow up, who'd seen me mowing my parents' lawn and shoveling their driveway. My name is Elizabeth Rose, Some of you may have seen posts on social media claiming I'm trying to steal my brother's inheritance. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's projector. I'd like to show you the actual documents. For the next 10 minutes, I walked them through everything. The original land purchase, the bank records showing my payments, the letters revealing my parents' true motivations. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Finally, Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down spoke up. "Elizabeth, honey, we had no idea." Most people don't. It's easier to believe the simple story. "What can we do to help?" "Nothing. Just know the truth." I packed up my laptop and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear whispered conversation starting. My phone rang as I reached my car. A Christian. "What the hell did you just do?" I told the truth. "You humiliated me in front of the whole neighborhood." "No, Christian, you did that yourself." The line went quiet for a long moment. "This isn't over," he said finally. "You're right, it's not." The knock on my door came at 11 p.m., soft, hesitant, not the angry pounding I'd expected. I looked through the peephole. Christian stood in the hallway, shoulders slumped, holding what looked like a bottle of wine. "Elizabeth, please, I just want to talk." I opened the door but left the chain on. "It's late." "I know. I'm sorry. His voice cracked. "Can I come in, please?" He looked broken, dark circles under his eyes, 3 days of stubble, clothes that smelled like he'd been sleeping in them. Against my better judgment, I let him in. "I brought this," he said, holding up the wine. "It's the good stuff from Dad's collection." "I don't want Dad's wine." "Right, of course." He set it on my counter and stood there awkwardly. "Nice place." "What do you want, Christian?" "I lost the court case. The adverse possession thing. Judge threw it out this morning." "I know. Margaret called." "And the lien. 18,000 now, with interest." He laughed bitterly. "Even if I could sell the house, I'd owe you money. That's how liens work." He slumped onto my couch without being invited. "I'm fucked, Elizabeth. Completely fucked." "What happened to your business plans?" "What business plans? I don't know how to do anything. I can't even get a job at GameStop because I have no work history." I stayed standing, arms crossed. "So what do you want from me?" "I want to understand. Why are you doing this?" "You really don't know." "I know you're mad about the will, but—" "This isn't about the will, Christian. This is about 33 years of being invisible." "You weren't invisible." "Name one time Dad was proud of me. One time he bragged about my accomplishments the way he bragged about your participation trophies." Christian was quiet for a long moment. "He was proud. He just didn't show it the same way. He showed it by cutting me out of his will because I'm a woman." "That wasn't personal." "It was completely personal," I snapped. "He literally wrote that I belong to another man's family someday, like I'm property to be transferred." "Dad was old-fashioned." "Dad was sexist, and you enabled it because it benefited you." Christian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "What now?" I asked. "Eviction notice. The bank's foreclosing on the house." "I thought Dad paid off the mortgage." "He did, but I took out a home equity loan 6 months ago." I stared at him. "You what?" "I needed money for investments." "What investments?" "Cryptocurrency. This guy online said it was a sure thing." "Jesus Christ, Christian." "I know, okay? I know it was stupid, but I thought if I could make some real money, Dad would finally respect me." "So you gambled away the house?" "I was trying to prove I could be successful." "By risking everything Dad worked for?" Christian buried his face in his hands. "I lost it all, every penny, and now the bank wants their money back." "How much?" $47,000. The same amount I'd paid to save the house 10 years ago. The irony was almost funny. When's the foreclosure? 30 days. I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. Behind me, I could hear Christian crying. Elizabeth, he said finally. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. For what? For everything. For being a terrible brother. For letting Dad treat you like shit. For taking everything for granted. I turned around. You want to know what the worst part is? He looked up, eyes red and swollen. I would have helped you if you just asked, if you treated me like family instead of competition. I know. But instead, you tried to steal from me. You hired investigators. You went on TV and called me jealous. I was desperate. You were entitled. There's a difference. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Rose, this is Jennifer Martinez from Safe Haven Women's Shelter. I understand you own property that might be available for purchase. I looked at Christian, still slumped on my couch. Yes, I said. I think it might be. We've been looking for a location to expand our transitional housing program. Would you be interested in discussing terms? Very interested. What kind of terms? We could offer $250,000 for the land and existing structure. Cash sale, closing within 2 weeks. Christian's head snapped up. He'd heard every word. That sounds perfect, I said. I'll have my attorney contact you tomorrow. I hung up and looked at my brother. $250,000, he whispered. Enough to pay off your loan and give you a fresh start. You'd do that? After everything? I walked to my front door and opened it. I'm not doing it for you, Christian. I'm doing it for women who actually need help. He stood up slowly, understanding dawning on his face. The house is going to be demolished? Turned into transitional housing for women escaping domestic violence. But that's our family home. No, I said quietly. That was Dad's house, built on my land, and now it's going to be something useful. Christian walked to the door, then stopped. What am I supposed to do now? What I did 10 years ago. Figure it out. He nodded and stepped into the hallway. I was about to close the door when he turned back. Elizabeth, what kind of man needs to steal from the sister who raised him? I met his eyes. Not the kind Dad wanted you to be. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in months, my apartment felt peaceful. The bulldozers arrived on a Tuesday morning. I stood across the street with my coffee, watching them survey the lot where 1247 Maple Street used to be. Ms. Rose? A woman in a hard hat approached. I'm Jennifer Martinez. We spoke on the phone. Call me Elizabeth. The demolition crew says they found something interesting in the basement. Want to take a look? We walked through the construction fence. The house was gone, reduced to neat piles of sorted debris. But in the exposed basement, someone had spray-painted words on the concrete wall. Elizabeth was here first, 2014. I laughed despite myself. I wrote that when I was helping Dad waterproof the foundation. He said it was childish. Seems prophetic now, Jennifer said. The construction foreman wants to preserve it, make it part of the memorial wall in the new building. Memorial wall? For the women we're helping, their stories, their strength. Your story fits right in. A car pulled up behind us. Luna got out carrying 2 cups of coffee in a manila envelope. Thought you might need caffeine, she said, handing me a cup. And this came to the office for you. The envelope was from Reed's law firm. Inside was a check for $232,000, the sale proceeds after paying off Christian's loan and legal fees. That's a lot of zeros, Luna said, reading over my shoulder. It's freedom. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Christian. Got a job at the hardware store. Thanks for not letting me drown completely. I showed Luna the message. Are you going to respond? Maybe, eventually. Another car pulled up. Margaret climbed out wearing jeans instead of her usual suit. Couldn't resist seeing the demolition, she said. How does it feel? Weird. Good weird, but weird. Any regrets? I looked at the empty lot, then at the construction plans Jennifer was showing Luna. 30 units of transitional housing, a community garden, a playground. No regrets. What about Christian? What about him? Think he'll be okay? He's 27 years old. Time he figured out how to be okay on his own. Jennifer rejoined us. Elizabeth, we'd like to name the building after you, the Elizabeth Rose Transitional Housing Center. That's not necessary. It is to us. Your story, what you did here, it matters. Women need to see that they can fight back, that they can win. A truck pulled up and Sylvia got out. She looked around at the construction site, her face a mask of disgust. Elizabeth, she called, we need to talk. No, we don't. You destroyed a family legacy for what? Some feminist statement? I turned an empty house into homes for 30 women. That's a better legacy than anything Dad ever built. Christian is working retail because of you. Christian is working retail because he gambled away his inheritance. Sylvia's face turned red. You could have helped him. I did help him for 10 years. I'm done now. This is cruel. You know what's cruel? I stepped closer. Watching your parents choose your brother over you every single day for 30 years. Being told you don't matter because you're a woman. Having your own family treat you like a servant while calling it love. Sylvia opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. She got back in her truck and drove away. Friend of yours? Jennifer asked. Former family. The best kind of former? Luna checked her watch. I should get back to work, but Elizabeth, there's something else. She pulled out her phone. Remember that investigator who called about you? Marcus something. He called again yesterday. Wanted to know if you'd be interested in consulting work. What kind of consulting? Helping other women navigate property disputes. Apparently word is getting around about what you did here. Margaret grinned. Elizabeth Rose, property rights advocate, has a nice ring to it. I looked at the check in my hands, then at the construction site, then at my friend standing beside me. You know what? It really does. We walked back to our cars together. As I unlocked my door, Jennifer called out, Elizabeth, the first residents move in next month. We're having a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Hope you'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. I drove home through streets I'd known my entire life, past the elementary school where I'd tutored kids for gas money, past the bank where I'd taken out the loan that started everything, past the cemetery where my parents lay under a headstone that read, Beloved Mother and Father. I didn't stop. At my apartment, I spread the architectural plans for the transitional housing center across my kitchen table. 30 small apartments, each one a fresh start for someone who needed it. My phone rang. The caller ID said, Christian. I stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. Hello? Elizabeth, I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For not letting me stay a child forever. I was quiet for a moment. You're welcome. Maybe we could get coffee sometime, when I'm ready. Maybe we could. After he hung up, I sat at my table with the plans spread out in front of me. 30 new beginnings. 30 women who would have a chance to build something of their own. I picked up a pen and wrote my name at the bottom of the page, not as someone's daughter or sister, but as Elizabeth Rose, property owner. Elizabeth Rose, who built her own legacy. The signature looked exactly right.